People will have to use the mics, by the way, now. For some reason, the microphone on the owl itself is not being especially sensitive.
Thanks for the reminder, Charles. Use the microphones. I think we're ready to go, though. Yes. Luckily, it's a light agenda. Yes.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the May meeting of the Ithaca Urban Renewal Agency Economic Development Committee. I'm the acting chair, I suppose, Donna Fleming. And we have Derek Adams, Chuck Schwerin, and Chauvin Hall here with us. Nels Bone is our staff member. So does anybody have any changes to the agenda? Nope. Good. Let's see here. No public comments.
Correct. No.
Okay, good. Anybody want to move the minutes from April 8th? Everybody moved all at once. I'll take Chuck and I'll take second from Derek. All in favor? That passes unanimously. Okay. All right, here we are. So the first item of new business.
I want to note that Leslie is joining remotely, but
Sorry?
because we have a quorum of 4 persons present, she can participate as a full member in this meeting.
Hi, Leslie. I didn't realize that, but hello.
Hello.
All right, so the first order of business, I think that's Nels will introduce a guest speaker who will give an overview of the Ithaca Area Economic Development Workforce Initiative Program.
Right. And as this committee is well aware, the IURA has been funding a number of job training and job placement programs for several years. Ithaca Area Economic Development has recently really upped their game in terms of providing job training programs. And I wanted to invite Daniel here to kind of walk us through their programs and how they're a little bit different, or their approach and their methodology to their programming, and understand better that program and explore potential opportunities for collaboration if it's appropriate. I'm going to turn over to Danielle to just talk. She's got a brief presentation and walk us through some of the programming. There's 2 different initiative programs she's going to talk about: the Direct to Work, which is a manufacturers focused program, and the Tompkins Work, which is a construction focused program. And Daniel, take it away, and remember the microphone as you've got it.
There we go. Perfect. All right. I think I got the thumbs up from Leslie that she can hear me. So, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danielle Zabo. I'm the Director of Workforce Innovation for Ithaca Area Economic Development. And over the last 3 years, we have created 2 industry partnerships, one in manufacturing and one construction. And today, I thought before we actually got into our local approach for workforce development that I would actually talk about the workforce model that we use, which has been a pretty successful model that is not anything special, but it's been around for decades, and it is industry-led and community-supported. And within it, usually there is clear expectations to place people into full-time employment. So this model that we use is called a known workforce industry partnership, and there are 6 components to that, and it really starts with the industry engagement. Usually, especially with economic development organizations, they have very strong relationships with industry partners, and usually when we work with them, they will tell us any challenges that they're having. Workforce, as we know in every industry, has been a challenge. So with that, we kind of take this opportunity to do an analysis of where is the actual gap? Is it entry level? Is it mid-skill? Is it higher level? Whatever it is, we kind of take that information, and that is kind of the driving factor to how an industry partnership is created. After we get the feedback from the industry, we then convene stakeholders. And this is a diverse group of stakeholders, and I won't go too in depth of this because the next slide will actually talk about the different roles within those stakeholders. But really, those stakeholders are establishing the overall goals for the industry partnership. It's not just placing people in the jobs, but how are you looking at systemic change within the organization, but also the community that you're serving. Mission statement, everyone is aligned in what we call dual client agreement. And just the last point that I'll part out is that it's partnership-based strategies. So it's not just one party that's creating this, but collectively it's all of the partners that are involved in it. So the stakeholder roles, employers, economic development entities, the educational partner, and the community partners. So the economic development organization acts as an intermediary. Our board is very diverse. Very often we work very closely with the counties, or every community has a workforce development board. And with that, you essentially align your strategic goals and missions to them, and you become what is known as the intermediary. The intermediary is the one that kind of works back and forth within the industry and community to essentially kind of create the initiative and then clearly identify the partners that go within the initiative. I won't read all of this. I will send the PowerPoint afterwards, so you have that. The only thing I'll redact is the photos of the individuals that are in it, if that's okay. So the dual client commitment, you have the business leaders that are kind of coming to the table. You have the community partners that are also coming to the table for the overall mission of essentially creating these inclusive pathways that saying, hey, we've identified the workforce challenges. We know that we need, in this case, entry-level workers. And in the community, we know the right community partners that are providing direct services. We know the right educational partners that can embed the prepare components. We also know the right social service agencies to provide the supportive services. So you essentially take that, and we have now a dual client agreement that we're all in this together to essentially create these inclusive pathways that not only create opportunity for living wage, but we've now identified good paying jobs that offer upward mobility within a organization and or industry. On the right side, that is an example of what we call our candidate profile. That is the process that I use, or the economic development organization as an intermediary uses to essentially identify what is the ideal candidate. Not within just the employers that are involved in the industry partnership, but essentially saying these are the baselines for someone to be a really great individual within the industry. So it's broken down by character traits, aptitudes, competencies, skills, physical requirements, and or certifications. And this usually takes up to a year because you're meeting with a lot of people within the organization, from leadership to HR, to the supervisors, to the actual people that are doing the job, to essentially get a 360 picture of what those things mean. And then you break those down into assessments to then be able to create matrix and resource tools to then embed into the community side so community partners can better assess individuals before they actually make a direct referral into the program. So now we're going to build the initiative, right? So we're building it backwards, industry-driven, community-supported. Because if we start on the other side, if we come up with this idea of like, we want to build a manufacturing program and we're going to get all these community partners, you have to have it aligned to actual jobs. So in the case of the industry partnership model, we start backwards. So when I came into IAD, there was already a convening of 8 manufacturers. Our industry partnership has now grown to 9. But these 8 manufacturers had reached out to our organization to say they were all having challenges with filling entry-level positions within their organizations. So those positions vary from machine operator to assembler to technician, electronic technician, CNC operator as well. So all of those, being able to do the candidate profile process, gave us those baselines that pretty much, if everyone can demonstrate these baselines, they can go into any of these variety of entry-level jobs within these 9 manufacturers. So the strategic development, this was intentional. As I said, we as an economic development organization should be working in unison with our workforce development board, as they are the funder that oversees the career center that's co-located with the Department of Labor. And their focus is to serve un- and underemployed. So we want to make sure that we align to their missions. And if we do that successfully, then we can get on their eligible training provider list to then able to offset some of the operational costs to help sustain the actual program itself. AMT, Alliance for Manufacturing and Technology, they're an industry partner. They're the MEP for the region, so they're already having these active relationships with these manufacturers. So it's a collaboration, or essentially, why can I not think of the word? Complementary to one another, because they're already working internally on the systemic change with the employers, where we can now work into the community to do the same thing with our partners. And Tompkins Cortland Community College, and I'll talk a little bit more later on in these slides, they have become the official educational partner for the initiative, because as we've gone through building out this framework, we wanted to identify the right community partner to fully embed the prepared component of the initiative in. As you can see to the far right, the implementation and supportive services, it takes a village to really sustain these. We have a lot of community-based organizations that we work with. This doesn't even list all of the community foundations, or sorry, all of the community partners that we work with. But essentially what this slide is to show you is that not one entity takes ownership of an industry partnership model. If you create it successfully, every partner that's involved can clearly understand where their role is within the actual initiative itself. So now let's transition into actually implementing this framework. You have identified the employers, your champion employers, because not all employers are invited into an industry partnership. You have now identified the right partners to strategically develop it, and you have found the right partners to implement it. So any workforce partner that I have ever worked with, I always use that little roadmap on the left side, those 6 components, to essentially do a gap analysis and as to whether or not that workforce initiative will be sustainable and successful. Because for a workforce initiative to be successful, you have to have these 6 components, and they have to align to whatever your expectations and outcomes are. So creating a targeted recruitment strategy. That is going to be influenced by the industry candidate profile. The assessment process is going to align not only just to the employer, but to the industry expectations. The referral component of that is making sure it's inclusive and meeting people where they are. The prepare component is also working with people to make sure that they will learn the applied skill that is needed when they transition to employment. The placement is the matchmaking side of it, and the supportive services is the wraparound. How are you able to mitigate barriers from the first touch point with that person all the way through the program upon placement and ongoing? Because these initiatives are typically developed to serve people that are underemployed. So we know that traditionally there are barriers, regardless of where you live. So what does this look like for the individual? Inclusive pathways. So within our initiatives, we hold industry orientations or info sessions. We embed these into community partners, and we do this within the community partners that understand our candidate profile and also provide direct services to job seekers. They're the first line of vetting. They know their clients better than we do. So we do train the trainers with all of their staff so they can understand not just what we're expecting in a program, but understand the expectations of the employers that we're working with. Because we don't want to set anyone up for failure. They're a requirement too, because we don't want to waste anyone's time. You have to attend an info session if you want to be accepted and eligible to the assessment process. So the assessment process is more around barrier mitigation. I want to see the level of problem solving for the person, the motivation, the commitment, and once again, we do an interview and an academic assessment. The academic assessment is not a standard assessment. It's actually the first chapter of the curriculum that we use because we want to make sure people feel comfortable with that level of academics. And the math that we use is actually math assessments that we've gotten from the employers. So we're trying to use tools that would be applicable to what they're going into, as opposed to using some standardized test that's testing people up here or down here. Within that, we actually embedded legal services on the front end, Law New York. I'll talk about the federal grant that we got later on, but they're on a 3-year retainer contract with us. And what we do in the beginning of this process is that anyone that has had any questions or any prior convictions, we will refer them to Law New York to go through a background check, have them get access to their rap sheet. And we do this intentionally because within our info sessions, we talk about the different types of backgrounds all of our employers have. So if I know someone has a certain felony and they want to go to Encodema 3D, Encodema 3D only does military grade contracts, and they do a federal or a Homeland Security background check. So you don't want to set someone up for failure in the beginning. So if we're able to help them mitigate that barrier in the beginning, then that person is better off. Once again, it's an opportunity to meet people where they are. At the top, the community referral, there's 3 pathways, and this is why this is inclusive. People might not be ready just yet. So how do we put them into academic or non-academic remediation services to then let them feed back into the assessment process the next time we have it? The second one would be going into our skills training, which we'll talk about those 2 programs that we have, Pathways to Manufacturing and Pathways to Apprenticeship. And the third one may be that, and we've done this before in our manufacturing, is that you already have the skills, but you need help with the networking opportunity. That you may have applied to a manufacturer several times, but you've never received a call back or anything. So we have direct relationships at leadership to HR with all of our manufacturers where we can do a direct referral for someone that has successfully gone through our assessment process that we feel that is higher than entry-level position, where we can do a direct referral into that employer if they have a position available. And then as you transition, if you successfully complete the skills training or the direct employment, we would then refer to the job interview. So that is the initiative framework. That is how you build the industry partnership. Those are the components that are the driving factors to now create the inclusive career pathways. So pathways to manufacturing and pathways to apprenticeship are the prepared within that 6 steps. Those are the prepared components. Those are the training programs that live within the industry partnership. So we're going to talk about manufacturing first. Direct to Work serves 9 local manufacturers in Tompkins County. I'm going to try to rattle them off. We have C&D Assembly, Encodema 3D, Knickerbocker, Transonic Systems, Borg Warner, Therm, Stork H&E Blading, Lansing Instrument, and Precision Filters. Thank you. I usually do it geographically, going all the way down. And the purpose really of these industry partnerships initiatives is to create better diversity within the manufacturing sector. We also are doing that within construction. Both of these we know are very solid industries, but they have done a really bad job diversifying these industries over decades, whether it's racially, gender, socioeconomics, whatever it is. So that's really another targeting factor too of creating these inclusive pathways. And as I mentioned already, that not all employers are invited into these industry partnerships. They have to offer living wage. They have to show us internal career pathways. How do they invest in their employees? And how can someone advance not just within them, but if they want to go back for college, how can they move upwards within the industry? So the program, Pathways to Manufacturing, is a 5-week full-time training. Last year, we worked very closely with Tompkins Cortland Community College to actually make it a SUNY recognized pre-apprenticeship program, which was a very huge success for us. With now being a SUNY pre-apprenticeship program, we were able to increase our stipend up to $1,000. They get 15 continuing education credit units if they successfully complete it. They also get a nationally recognized credential that's been vetted with our 9 manufacturers to become a certified manufacturing associate. And within this, they receive hands-on training as well. So I built out 34 hours of metrology, hands-on practice with dial calipers and micrometers. And then last year, I built out a 15-hour soldering lab too for individuals to practice through-hose soldering, which is a skill that 3 of our electronic manufacturers used. So within the industry partnership and also building out these programs, it's always an 80-20. Every year I go back to get feedback from the employers to say, how can we do this better? So the road is always built 80% of the way, and there's always 20% for improvement. So every year I always look to say, what additional skills do we need to embed or expose these individuals to? On top of the technical skill, individuals also have to complete 100 hours of non-technical skills, which is all communication-based, all competency. So within that, they do a lot of team building, they do a lot of group discussions and activities. And what we're assessing through employability skills is, now I'm gonna rattle these 9 off, Attitude, accountability, adaptability, confidence, motivation, stress management, dependability, motivation, and confidence. So they have to successfully demonstrate those things before they are eligible to be put in front of an employer for an interview. So visually, these are just some slides to show the metrology practice and the soldering lab. We worked with TC3's professor to figure out what is a relatable through-hole soldering activity that they could do, and they build digital clocks. And if they successfully solder them correctly, they will light up and you can actually program them. So we wanted to give them something tangible to take home to show that they're actually applying the skill. They bring them to the employers. They're really proud to show this. What we are now working on in 2025 is that, yes, great, we've boosted up our electronic side of things, but what we're really missing in this region is CNC operator machine programs. We're currently relying on the employer-sponsored trainings that they do internally, but we know that if we actually work with TC3 to build out a CNC machine operator training, we would actually have a more qualified individual before they actually transition into the employer. So that's another enhancement that we're working on this year for direct to work. So within the direct to work program, we also spend a full day at each of the manufacturers, and we do this intentionally so they get to hear, see, and smell those work environments. We try to break down these experiences not to just look at the hourly pay rate, but really look at the work culture. These employers are very different from one another. Their shifts vary from one another. They're large, they're small, some of them cross-train, some of them only hire you for one position in one department. So we do this intentionally, so when they do a deeper dive of saying, okay, which employer do you want to apply to? Well, why is that? You got to look at the longevity of that. So as you can see, they get hands-on training and experience at each of the manufacturers that they go to as well. So since 2022 up to last year, we've ran 6 cohorts. We've served 74 individuals. We have maintained a low to moderate income service. And I actually just pulled, and I don't know the exact percentage of this, but the majority of people that have gone through our manufacturing program have been the city residents of Ithaca. We have been running this program up until this year in the Commons in the TC3 Ithaca Extension Center. But this year we've actually now transitioned up to the Dryden campus. But looking at the data, the majority of people have been city residents of Ithaca. So in 2023, we applied for a work grant through the Department of Labor, and we were awarded $1.2 million with a grant period of October of 2023 through September of 2026. And the purpose of this was to, first of all, help me get funding to continue to grow direct to work. But more importantly, we were getting pressure from our construction trades folks to say we really could use the same type of framework and model for a construction trades industry partnership. We have a lot of economic activity that's going on in New York State. North of us, we have Micron that is starting, that's $100 billion. Southworks, which is the largest economic project that's here in our community. And then we also have the hundreds of millions of dollars that are being pumped into Binghamton for the clean tech hub and all of that. So what we do know is that we need to grow our local labor, and we need to put more people into the trades to support the construction phases of all of the economic activity that's happening in the state. So Tompkins Build was built. So this is a scale and replication of the Build model and the Pathways to Apprenticeship program. So the Build model has been around for 20 years. It was based out of San Francisco, and across the country, there's 209 Pathways to Apprenticeship programs. And this was actually created through NABTU, the North American Building Trades Union. And the whole purpose of this initiative, once again, is to diversify the construction sector, racially, through gender, veterans, as well as socioeconomics. So for the last year and a half, I have worked with 10 of the 13 trades that are within the Tompkins-Cortland Building Trades Council to work on their candidate profiles, to the same process that I did with the manufacturers, to get the baselines of those character traits, the aptitudes, the competencies and skills that are needed for the construction trades. And with doing that, we have now created this pre-apprenticeship readiness program. And the point of the pre-apprenticeship readiness program is to educate people of what it means to be part of an apprenticeship, what it means to be part of a union. A lot of people that go into an apprenticeship or a union does not really understand what that means until they're actually in. And this is an opportunity for people to be fully exposed to what all 10 trades do before they make an informed decision of which union they want to apply to. So this program is an hourly paid training, which is a little different from our manufacturing program. Our manufacturing is a short-term program. Like I said, 5 weeks full-time. This is a 11-week hourly paid training. Just like Direct to Work, Tompkins Build offers industry recognized credentials. The MC3 is the multi-craft core curriculum, which was created by the national chapter, the North American Building Trades Unions. We give everyone OSHA 10 certification, and they also become CPR and first aid certified. And the reason why we did this is when I was going through the candidate profile process is that all of these certifications give give individuals extra points on their application and interview process when they're applying to a union. We go to each of the unions, to their training halls to get hands-on. Everyone gets a student toolkit. There are 20 different hand tools that they will get to keep. And just like Direct to Work, they all get extra supports around math skills as well as interview prep. In this case, there's entrance exams or aptitude tests when you're applying to unions. So once again, we are trying to embed as many supportive services and wraparounds before people decide which union they want to apply to. So these are just, once again, more visuals of the hands-on. I worked with Milwaukee Tools to get a sponsorship. So IAD invested in about $9,500 worth of power tools, and Milwaukee matched that with over $9,000 of power tools that they donated to us or sponsored us or invested in us to be able to do our program project. So in these pictures, the individuals for this current cohort that's running are actually building 4x4 walls where they're going to be installing a sink. They're going to be installing plumbing and electrical. They're going to be doing some drywall and tiling. But on top of that, they're going to all 10 trades. And as I rattled off the manufacturers, I should probably try to rattle off all of the unions. So let me go back to the slide with the actual pictures of them. That helps me. The plumbers and pipe fitters the plumbers and pipe fitters are actually hosting us. I should share that we fully immersed this and co-developed this with the unions. The unions have been by my side from the beginning. All active union members are teaching the program. All active members are coming in to actually do the hands-on of it. And the plumbers and pipe fitters are actually hosting us at the training hall where we run the program Monday through Thursday from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. for 11 weeks. So we have the plumbers and pipe fitters, we have the electricians, we have the bricklayers and masons, we have the sheet metal workers, IUPAT, who is the painters, glazers, or allied trades, iron workers, the laborers, the insulators, the carpenters, and the operating engineers. So hopefully by next year, we'll have all 13 of the trades up there, but 10 is pretty good for a pilot. Okay, so for field trips, the unions had to come up with, because we are spending a whole night out at each of their training halls, to come up with hands-on supplemental content to expose them to their trades. Essentially, this is their showcase to say, all right, we should be your union of choice. So we actually last week were out at the bricklayers and masons, and they set up tiling, they set up bricklaying, and they also taught people how to pour concrete. We were also at the iron workers where they were doing rebarb. They were screwing in and showing how to how they restructure bridges, and I'm doing a very bad job of explaining that, and teaching them how to tie specific knots. So we, this week, actually tomorrow, we'll be at the painters and glazers, which will be really fun. And then next week we'll be at the electricians and carpenters and the operating engineers. We've been to all the other 5 for the previous weeks of the program. So this is a pilot program. We are way ahead of schedule from our work grant. We were actually not expecting to run Tompkins Build until 2026. But with the urgency of Micron and the building trades councils of feeling this need to increase the numbers of their apprentices, we kind of prioritized this to be ahead of schedule to launch something this year. So this year we're running 2 cohorts, a spring and a fall. This program that's currently running started March 31st and it'll graduate, June 12th, but our actual graduation will be on June 17th. And the really interesting thing with this pilot, and I was sharing with Niels before we started, is that within a 2.5-week period, we received 170 applications for this program, which was very telling to us that there is a need in this area and there is an interest of becoming part of the trades. And within this 170 applications, we actually had 70 people complete our assessment process. Same process that we've created for manufacturing. And within that, we took 15. I wish I could have taken more, but with an hourly paid training, my payroll for 11 weeks is $88,000. And that's not including my instructors. So it's a very expensive initiative to run, because that's the number one question I get. Why didn't you take more people? And I wish I could. So that's actually a picture of the student toolkit that everyone gets. We actually had it in our budget to purchase 30 of these toolkits, but Milwaukee actually surprised us and donated all 30 of the toolkits this year for us, which was really wonderful. So what do you gain from these types of pathway programs? Not only is it a paid training, because we want to try to target people that are underemployed, but we want to give them some type of financial compensation if they're going to take a chance on bettering their life. But it's industry exposure. I never got paid to check out my job before I applied to it. And the idea is that we want to expose what these industries have to offer as a career pathway. So by doing field trips and doing hands-on, people are then empowered to make informed decisions of where they want to apply to after they successfully complete the program. We are embedding people directly from the field. It's not me teaching them construction, because that'd be very bad. So, so to have, like, especially in the case of construction, we have the unions that are there. They're building up relationships. They're building up mentors for that. We worked diligently through the candidate profile process to identify the industry recognized credentials that are relevant here locally. We're not just saying, oh, these are nationally recognized. No, our local employers are recognizing these credentials for people that are coming through a competency-based program. And for these 2 industries, math is important. It's a use it or lose it. And when you're working with adult education learners that have not been in the classroom environment for a long time, there's that support, because there's a level of embarrassment when you're not able to do something academically. So we try to create a supportive classroom environment where we can give that opportunity. And then the wraparound services, the financial empowerment, the legal, and then the career counseling that we incorporate in it. So the other question I get is the eligibility. Within the candidate profile, 18 years and older. This is the baseline that our employers have set for employment. High school diploma and GED is preferred for both of these programs, because some of the employers have waived the requirement and some of the unions have actually waived the requirement for GED requirement. So that should not be a barrier if people don't have it. The other ones are more of just the generic. You have to have a desire. You have to show us that you want to go into this industry. There is a physical component to both of these industries, and you have to have a certain level of reading, writing, and speaking. So next steps. What am I up to now? So I applied for an OSWD grant, which is the Office of Strategic Workforce Development. That's state funding through ESD, the Empire State Development. And that funding will actually provide us flexible capital to create our 3rd initiative known as Southern Tier Connect, Vehicles to Work. And this is my transportation supportive service initiative. So as we know, transportation is a massive barrier in this region. We are extremely rural. We have a high commuter rate into especially Ithaca. So to support both of these initiatives and individuals that are coming through it, we have secured funding in our federal grant to create contracts and cover the staffing cost, but we needed flexible dollars to be able to meet people where they are. We didn't want to create a Band-Aid of just giving people temporary bus passes, but how do we really get people into sustainable vehicle or transportation solutions? So the flexible capital will allow me to do driver's license restoration with people, pay for fines, car repairs, and now I'm looking for a local CDFI to buy a car or to develop a car buyer program for. I've built a couple of these in other communities for healthcare and manufacturing, and they've been successful, but we know not everyone's looking for a new car. So that's why we wanted to create opportunities with other flexible capital to pay for people if they already have a car of such. And I think that's my last slide. So hopefully I have left enough time for questions.
Wow. It's a lot to take in. I'm sure there are some questions. So why don't you just, if anybody wants to query anything of Danny?
Dan, how'd you market the manufacturing, the construction initiative? How did you get those 170 applicants?
Yeah, so we have a marketing agency, HLA, and we actually were recruiting for manufacturing and construction at the same time, and we created a digital campaign strategy where we bought ads on Google. We did algorithms on Facebook. If certain demographics were on Facebook and they were on there, our flyer would come up. And then if people randomly searched anything for any of the local unions and or apprenticeship, it would actually redirect them to the Tompkins Build website or Direct to Work website first. Oops, sorry. So we ran that for 2.5 weeks. What I was sharing with Niels is that looking at the data of the 170 applications, the majority of people actually came from outside of Tompkins County, where at the same time we used the same strategy for manufacturing, where we only got 30 applications. The majority were actually direct referrals from our community partners. So this has actually led to a larger strategic conversation as to why is that happening? And is it because with construction, everyone has been exposed at some level of what construction is? You've helped your grandparents, you helped your parents, you can give a basic definition of what that is. But manufacturing, there's still a lot of questions of actually what is advanced manufacturing. So are people not choosing that as their first choice of industry? We're not sure. So this has now led into a series of meetings to figure out how do we actually create a deeper candidate pool for manufacturing, but we did not change the strategy of how we marketed it. We did it at the same time for both. Looks like Leslie has her hand up.
Sure. Thank you, Danielle. This was really amazing to see how these two programs have been developed. And I think there's so much potential here to provide, opportunities for members of the community and provide workforce for the partner organizations. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking with Nels about this presentation that you've just done. And I said, it would be really cool to see collaboration with some of the other programs that our organization is regularly seeing coming to the table for the really, the for lack of a better term, the very high touch work preparatory training. And I'm thinking of the organizations that are applying year on year for the HUD cycle. These are folks that I think aren't yet ready for something as intensive as the training programs that you're putting together. And it's so high touch that so far we have never yet seen the larger scale impact that I think we'd all like to. And I haven't really articulated it in my mind yet what the question is for you, but what I'm really interested in seeing is how could this really beautifully structured program pair with some of the other organizations that don't have the scale or the capacity for the scale, but they have the really intense experience of many years of working with folks to get them to the point where they'd be ready for something like this. Because I think that's a population that otherwise is getting left out. We don't realize until we work directly with that population. I'm talking about folks who may not be anywhere near the high school graduation, may never have worked a formal job, may have legal troubles, may be unhoused, and are just going to need so much preparatory to even getting into a program like this. I would love to see your programs able to help the other organizations scale up to impact those, because that's the population most in need, I think.
So to answer that, and I'll try to go back to the slide, that's the beauty of the industry partnership model, is that you can have multiple programs under the actual industry partnership. So in the case of some of these other workforce training programs that are working with some populations that are defined as like the hardest to serve, that are maybe at the level of job readiness, that are not ready for career readiness, how do you create bridge programming, right? How do you start aligning what their program expectations are for someone to exit out to then transition into a higher level of industry related or industry specific career readiness programming. This is where kind of working with the Workforce Development Board is crucial, because they are essentially the workforce intermediary, and a lot of these programs should be embedded into the Career Center. As a funnel, they're serving all that are un and underemployed. So if we're all working collectively to create a cohesive ecosystem, because we do have a lot of wonderful workforce training programs that are serving multiple sectors, right? So how do you actually embed that into one entity where then if you have the Career Center that's actually assessing people and working with all of them, they can actually work with multiple programs to then filter people in. So I go back to this slide because I think, it's identifying workforce training programs that you're working with that want to kind of strengthen their outcomes, but also maybe create clarity around what the expectations are. And by working with them to essentially do the gap analysis of working through those 6 steps that are located on the left side. Any of these programs can create their own industry partnerships within the industry that they're serving. The thing that I want to emphasize, and I've said this throughout our presentation, is that not all employers are invited to the table. You have to be a champion employer. You can't just create a program just to serve an industry. You have to have clear expectations of who you're serving and what jobs you're targeting for it to be successful. So it's really figuring out those partners that want to take that time to do a reset on their current training program to say, all right, do I have these 6 components in place? And can I clearly articulate how I'm doing these 6 components? And if not, that's my gap. That's what I need to work on. And the placement is usually the pretty big gap that a lot of these workforce training programs have not been able to do. And I think with IED, with our relationships with industry partners, this could also be another area of support for that. But really just working and educating those partners too on this framework and how it's been successful in placing people into jobs.
Yeah, I think, Nels, this is an opportunity for this committee perhaps to reach out to help maybe build these relationships with the organizations that we're seeing coming to the table but aren't able to yet scale like this. I'd like to see us help bridge those communications.
Good point. Yeah.
I mean, to what was just said, it'd be interesting to know how many people who are part of these programs are also part of the candidate pool, applying specifically for the direct to work. I was sort of curious, thinking about, long term, you talk about the wraparound supports that take place after people have been placed. And if I recall correctly, there was a figure that like 88% placement was what happened after that. Do you have a goal for retention after a certain number of points? I'm sure it's 100%, but we have to be a little more realistic about that. So what is
75% retention,
75?
30, 60, 90, 6 months and a year. So we've actually just built capacity on our team. We have a workforce development manager. The one thing about supportive services and what's also unique to the pathway programs is that there's intensive case management that happens during the program. There's a case manager or manager in the program all day, every day while programs are running. And that's the idea, is really to work with people to strengthen their problem solving ability, because it's a safe place to start problem solving. I see that you want to immediately get into this employer, but you're a 1-car household. Your spouse works this shift. You say you want to work this shift. Well, where's your childcare? Is that secure? So that level of case management is really important, because that manager, our IAD manager, is the liaison of the employer relationships, the community partner relationships. they're working with the community partners to say, okay, does this client that was referred by so-and-so, do they have access to those supportive services? If not, then this is a gap for IAD to figure out how do we bring that supportive service in. Transportation is a clear example of that. There's several of our social service agency partners that can offer temporary bus passes or Uber rides or that, but that's just a Band-Aid. That's not really the long-term solution. So that was a driving factor as to why I went for that grant. But the intensive case management is really important to that. And I would love to have 100% retention. But to the previous question that Chuck had around the marketing and this larger series of conversations now that we're having of 170 people, let's say we create an hourly paid training for manufacturing, just like we did for construction, and we build the best program and we vet the best candidates. It's a dual client model because the employers have to work on systemic change internally for retention. We know manufacturing as an industry right now is up against a lot of retirement, and there's other challenges that they're up against right now with supply chain disruptions and projects. You have people that are going into early retirement. The challenge of lack of public trainings like the CNC operator training, right? We are now reliant on employer-sponsored training. So if I'm a new employee that's coming in, I now get partnered with Donna to teach me how to do CNC. Well, Donna might be ready to retire, or Donna might not be a best communicator. And if I'm a new employee that doesn't mesh well with Donna, I might not stay with the employer. So it's really figuring out, it's a deeper thing around culture change, systemic change. And that's why the industry partnership, you're not just working on the community side to build the best program ever. It's also working with the employers to how do you better improve work culture? How do we maybe cross-train more people? How do we change the shift schedules? So it's both sides of that.
I'll ask my question quickly. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. It's awesome to hear about the program work that you're doing. I was curious, since you're about to graduate the first cohort of people through the construction program, if you have an idea of how many people from that program are going to have job placements after the conclusion of this one. And I was also curious, I know that you mentioned that all of the manufacturing industries that you work with for the workforce industry partnership have to have be a living wage employer, if there's been any challenges with maintaining that as that has shifted.
It's a great question. And yeah, I think our standards of living wage are a little varied because we don't essentially are looking or holding them to the same threshold as what has been designated locally as the living wage. All of our employers offer $18.59 or higher. So, but they're all full-time positions and they all have paid time off and they all have tuition reimbursement. So we're looking at the full benefits package of that as such. It is above minimum wage. The second question around what is our expectations for placement for the apprenticeship? We've actually had several people already interview with some of these unions. The unions are unique because not all of them run the same. The plumbers and pipe fitters and the electricians right now are actually within their eligibility windows for recruitment, which means that applications were due by midnight of March 31st, where everyone had to come in April to do their aptitude tests. And if they scored a certain level in aptitude, they would be welcomed back in May for interviews. If we miss this eligibility window, people that are graduating from this program would not be able to interview until May of 2026. So it's a little wonky because with apprenticeships, you're on a list, it's a rank system, and they can only take X amount of people in it. But the feedback that we've already gotten from the involved unions, and because of working on the point systems for direct entry, these individuals have a pretty good chance of actually being accepted as first-year apprentices as they come out of this program, as opposed to having to be on the waiting list. So check back with me at the end of June to see where people are landing. And then some of them have open enrollment where they're on a rolling basis of application and they can take people all year round, like the carpenters, for example, or the laborers. So what I tell people is don't make an informed decision until you've experienced all 10 trades. That's the point of this experience. Because you're now looking at what are the dues, the geographical location of where the trainings are. Is it a paid apprenticeship versus a non-paid apprenticeship? So we want to make sure that they have all the information before they decide. We're letting them to apply up to 3 unions of choice as they graduate. Not to say they can't apply for more, but really they need to identify why they want to go into that trade for long term. It's tough work.
Yeah, yeah.
Could you explain a little bit more what it means to be a pre-apprentice in one of the trades? And what does it mean from the applicant's point of view if they're selected? What does that mean economically, or, how does that work?
So the wonderful thing about the trades running the program and co-developing it, the first week we actually had all the business managers from each of the trades come in to talk about the pensions, the annuity, the healthcare plans, and the hourly. The difference of this is what it is for a first year, second year, third year, 4-year journey level. This is what your take home is versus actually what is put away for every single hour that you work. So the idea of having that information up front has been very helpful in terms of the apprentice. And this has been the ongoing message that all the trades have said is that you're going to have to put your time in for the first 3 years. It's going to be tough work. It's grunt work. You're going to be at the bottom of the totem pole. Whatever is asked of you, you need to do. It's going to be a lot of picking up, lifting, moving. And that's really kind of the exposure of this. You kind of have to work your way. You have to show, that you're not only just committed to the contractor, but also committed to the actual work and not letting your team down. There's a massive emphasis on the employability skills. There's been an ongoing message of if you are lazy, that is going to follow your name and you're not going to get a call back from another contractor. So it's really, and it's crazy because message can be told from many people and it can be received differently. So when you're hearing directly from the people that have been in these unions for 10, 20 plus years, and they come in and say the same exact thing, and I'm like, I told you so. Like, it's different. I'm not part of it, but you're hearing the same message over and over again, and it's resonating with them. And I will tell you, this class starts at 3 and no one comes in after 2:30. They're all there by then. And I'm like, I'm not paying you, but I'm very happy that you're here a half hour early.
Would a placement like that count as a job and employment? I mean, from your funder's point of view, is that?
Yes. So we're working with contractors too within this. So to kind of get a sense of where people are placed. So with running a program so expensive and also liability insurances, because we're putting a lot of power tools in their hands, right? I had to find a way to eliminate that risk and liability on all of the trades. So this program, people are actually going through a staffing agency. So we're partnered with Express. And Express is actually picking up the liability insurance. The only thing we can't do is put chainsaws in their hands, and we can't put them on ladders over 10 feet high. So what we've also worked out with Express, because of apprenticeships that you might be on a waiting list for a few months, the Express folks can actually work with placing people in a construction related job until they actually get picked up by a contractor by one of their unions. And if they do that, we actually get access to that employment information as well. So I would say construction's a little more fluid than the direct job placements in manufacturing. When people go through our direct to work pathways to manufacturing program, from beginning to end, people are placed in a job within the 6th or 7th week. So the program's 5 weeks long. The week after, they go through their proctored exam for the national credential, and by that following week, they're already in interviews and they get placed very quickly. So it's a way faster process than what our construction program is. But the expectations are clear, regardless of the program. People know exactly what they're getting into and what is expected of them and expected of us from the first touch point.
I'm just curious if in either case, are they considered independent contractors and does it help with MWBE requirements?
No,
It's
No.
just as a company, you got to be.
no, like, once again, this is directly feeding people into the unions. The union I'm considering as a hiring hall, the contractors that they're working with. The graduates that are coming out are not considered independent contractors. No. I wanted to make that very clear because that was one of the concerns of, well, are people coming out of this? Can they go work for non-union? I said, the idea is to get people officially accepted into their union of choice, work with them on their entrance exams, their interview, and have them enroll. However you work with a person to place them on work, that's within the union. I should not
And are they
dictate that.
paying dues whether they're hired or not?
That would be per the union of however they set that up of the requirements of paying dues. But we actually have flexible capital to actually help people with paying dues and or if they need additional tools when they actually enroll into their first year of apprenticeship, if it's not sponsored already by their union of choice. See, it's not standard across all the trades. I wish it was, but they all do it differently. And the price of dues are differently too.
Have you been successful attracting a diverse kind of pool of candidates?
So yeah, diversity looks very differently across the two initiatives. So with our current construction program, it's 50% male and 50% women. Racial diversity is not there, and socioeconomics is there. Education levels are way higher. Everyone has a high school diploma or a GED, with the exception of one person. Our manufacturing program, I would say, is lower in gender diversity, 50% in racial diversity, which is interesting. And I, once again, want to do a deeper study. Is this because of working with our community partners and the direct referrals versus the individuals that we got through the construction outreach as well? The region itself is 90% white, so I'm wondering if that is impacting our racial diversity as well.
Chair's permission. Thank you, Chair. Tom Knight, City of Ithaca Economic Development, and thank you to the committee for engaging with this. You know, I've engaged with this presentation several times, and I'm really glad that the conversation is expanding to this group. I've come to see Danny as an evangelist, if you will, in the best way, in the best sense, for an industry-led workforce model. And so really glad to hear the group's questions and engagement. And my question is like, within the city and the county, but also within the region, what opportunities do you see in the future, 2, 3, 5 years? Which industries do you see as most sort of ripe for phase 3, if you will, expanding this model to other industries? Or are you, where you need to be and it's more just making sure you can serve more people within the programs you've already established? Are you looking to expand either as IAD, or what opportunities generally do you see to expand into this model specifically into other industries?
So if IAD would let me expand capacity, I'm ready to go for a third industry partnership. Which we've had conversations and we've been approached. So once again, with industry partnerships, we don't actively seek out the industry comes to us. And I think we actually talked about this in one of our previous conversations, which we've identified as health services or human services, and there's a need for childcare providers. We know, especially with childcare facilities, there's a lack of teacher aides and staff. So it would kind of be killing two birds with one stone if we were actually able to create inclusive pathways, because we've already identified the gap that TC3 offers a certain level of credentialing, but there are no training programs that are hitting the lowest position within childcare to teach people how to actually get their foot in the door into one of these childcare provider facilities. So that is something that we've talked about with some of the facilities that are actually here, of how can we actually create this pathway and then create bridge programming for people that want to advance up into TC's 3 certification program. But it ties into capacity. And I need more people to be able to do as such, to run a third industry partnership. So we kind of took a step back, and that's why we created Southern Tier Connect as our third initiative, because we really do need transportation supportive services to support the 2 existing industry partnerships. So I think it's an answer of both. We want to continue to scale and serve as many people as possible through both of these industries, as well as I would say human or health services would be our next for childcare. But I think it also goes to the previous question, and what Leslie had brought up is we don't want to duplicate and we don't want to create a competing model. So if there are already workforce training programs and providers that are already running a workforce training program in a targeted sector for our community, how can we help them enhance or grow that into an industry partnership? And or how do we start creating that cohesive ecosystem to create bridge programming to all of the educational partners in it? Yeah.
You'd expect me to ask this question sooner or later, but what do you know, when you analyze the costs for a successful placement,
I knew this was
what is that, what is that number? Our number has been, for a placement, about $8,500 per job placement in our programs over the last couple of years. A little bit higher in one program than the other, but that's just, in a job. That's not a career necessarily, but
Mhm.
yeah, but that's just kind of where our numbers sort out.
It's a good question. I think my role and responsibility, not just as economic development organization, but also the director of workforce innovation, is that if I create these initiatives, I have to find a way to sustain them. And it's figuring out the healthy formula of federal, state, and local dollars to sustain it. So as I mentioned earlier, the partnership with the Workforce Development Board is really important because I'm offsetting operational costs under WIOA. It aligns to their metrics because when they fund people, they have to upskill people, they have to place people in a job, and they also have to follow the retention. So we wanted to make sure that we align to that. With that, the tuition cost for direct to work is $781 per person. So that offsets the cost of OSHA 10. It offsets the cost of the non-technical skills instructor and the proctored and national credential. We also worked with SUNY through TC3 to leverage that funding to offset the remaining of the technical skills cost and stipend for direct to work. The SUNY funding is good through 2027. WIOA funding is, well, unless the current administration cuts it, the WIOA funding should be there and it's annually renewed in that. Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, it's federal dollars that are allocated to states, and then the states distribute that across to the workforce development boards. The workforce development boards are the funders that oversee one-stops or the career centers that provide the direct services to job seekers. So that was one way to offset and sustain program costs for direct to work. Like I said, our construction is a whole other expense, but where my head is going to sustain this, because it's systemic change, right? Looking at the city's local labor policy, looking at the IDA's local labor policy, before projects that want to come forward and ask for incentives, are you abiding to the local requirements of that? And if not, how can we create a penalty that actually goes back into funding a local workforce initiative that's building up local labor, which is apprentices? So I'm so sorry. So that's something, but that takes long term. That is, but something that could help and self-sustain some of the operational costs. With that, over time, it's working with other partners to become investors into the initiative to offset the cost of paid training. We know paid training is an important component when you build these initiatives because you want people to commit to this. So unfortunately, you can't get away with free training much anymore from what we've experienced. So it's really figuring out how do you continue to go to grants. And I think this is also why collaboration is really important, because when you actually have a lot of different organizations competing for the same dollars, not everyone's going to get funded. So the nice thing about industry partnerships, if you write in multiple partners, you're actually bringing more money and building capacity in that. So for our work grant, we have contracts with the Workforce Development Board. We have offset the recruitment, the assessment, and referral within the Career Center. So they are actively screening their caseloads for individuals that have prior manufacturing, construction, or general labor to then bring them into an info session. So putting money, building capacity in their staff is working smarter because I only have one program manager. So it's kind of figuring out, how do I bring those dollars in? While in New York, we know that legal services are absolutely critical. So we have a retainer contract, they're written into it. The educational partners are written into it. So it's really kind of figuring out what that formula is, federal, state, and local, to be able to sustain these. Thank you.
That's good. Very good, yes.
Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Okay, okay,
I
next.
just want to mention that
Yes.
Lonnie from HETP is back here. He's been watching the show. I invited the other providers, and Monica from Historic Ithaca was here earlier too. So
Good.
just so you're aware of that.
Yeah, he looked familiar, but I couldn't remember. Hi. Okay, so, annual election of committee officers is next. Let me find that page in our agenda. Yes, page, 7. So according to the resolution in our packet, we would be nominating as chairperson for the Economic Development Committee, Rob Cantelmo, and vice chairperson would be Leslie Ackerman, to serve
Well,
for a year.
those are the current officers.
Those are the current officers. I see what you're saying. Okay, so we don't actually have a complete resolution to move. Would anybody like to nominate a chairperson to serve a year? With this,
Right.
we don't have a resolution to move.
Right, we need to fill in the blanks.
Right.
And the committee selects their vice chair and then nominates a chair to the IRA to appoint. It's a little bit weird, but one of those two people must be an IRA member. So, Donna, Siobhan, or Rob are one of, they need to fill one of those two seats per our bylaws. But they don't have to be the chair necessarily. So we need to fill out, so this committee will select the vice chair and nominate a chair candidate to the IRA.
Did Rob Cantelmo agree to be nominated for another year?
We did not have an opportunity to discuss it.
We didn't ask him and he's not here. Yes, Siobhan.
Talked to Rob previously and he said he was not particularly enthusiastic about being chair of another committee, given all of his things, and he had asked if I would be interested in
Mhm.
chairing this committee, which I am open to doing unless, Donna, you feel strongly about wanting to
Mhm.
nominate yourself for chair position.
Yeah, I would be fine doing that. So,
Question,
yes.
is Rob going to be able to function as a regular member of the committee because he hasn't been able to participate in too many meetings up to this point. So I'm just curious about his participation in general.
We could query him about that. We have 6 members, so we have traditionally had 5 members. And at one point, he kind of joined the committee when we were at a lower membership. So he might be open to taking that in consideration. I don't know. He's interested in the economic development sphere of the IRA, but you're right. He's missed a couple of these meetings, been unable to attend because he has a lot of other duties
Right,
that
right,
he has to attend to.
right. I think it makes sense, having been hanging around this committee for a while, for at least hopefully the chair, but hopefully the chair and the vice chair to be folks who can regularly attend, because if the chair is absent a lot, that's not ideal for the smooth functioning of the meetings.
So Leslie, are you willing to be vice chair for another year? Because I'd be willing to step into that. Either
I'm
one.
willing to be vice chair. I can do whatever folks request of me. Vice chair thus far has been fairly not terribly onerous, because typically I haven't had to step into the chair position, but I'm okay one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. So Chauvin, Rob asked you to be chair?
He asked me if I would be open to doing that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, he didn't ask me, so let's go ahead and nominate
Also,
you.
we can make decisions separate of what Rob desires. We have our own agency as individuals.
Well,
Indeed.
I would like to nominate Siobhan to
Thank you.
serve as chair.
Okay, so, and she's also a member of the board. Okay.
But you would have to be approved by the IURA, is that right?
Correct,
That's
yeah,
fine.
right.
So we're
It'll be
putting
on-
you forward to the IURA for
Right.
selection, which still leaves the vice chair.
And then let's nominate Leslie to be vice chair. Is that okay, Leslie? You said
That's
yes.
fine, although I don't think it's a nomination, right, Nels? It's a selection.
It
that-
actually would be an appointment of the vice
Appointment.
chair, but yes, right.
So we need a resolution to do that?
Right, so what I'm hearing is that the proposed resolution would fill in the first blank with Siobhan's name as a candidate, a nominee for the chairship for the next year, and would appoint Leslie again for another term as the vice chair.
All right.
And so
would any-
Siobhan's nomination goes to the full IURA, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. All right. Would any, so I move the resolution as Nels just stated.
Second that.
So Derek seconds, all in favor? Yeah,
Aye.
we're good. We're good. Okay.
Right.
Do we have a sense of when the IURA will make the decision about this? Is it
They
the next
meet the
meeting?
the fourth Friday of the month.
Okay, so it's not like
Just-
we have to wait a long period of time.
Right, and members, officers always serve until replaced, so there's,
Okay.
you know,
There won't be a gap.
no gap.
When's inauguration day?
Can we have a party?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So next on the agenda is the IURA adopted recommended 2025 HUD entitlement action plan review. I feel like we've reviewed this a
Sorry,
gazillion times
I think
already.
Was a holdover from a draft agenda, so
Okay,
that we don't need to.
Not
go
review
there.
it again.
Yeah, that was discussed last month and somehow found its way back on the
Thought
agenda.
so.
Very good memory in
It's
that.
like it's not going away.
It's still there.
Okay. And also, should we also review the IURA grant disbursement loan and lease receivable
Right,
reports?
that is an updated month from last
Okay.
time the committee saw it, but because if you serve on other committees, you might have seen the March one already. I think the governance committee, for example, saw this one. But it's basically showing us the spend down, the disbursements of grants year by year. We probably in the last 3 months have really gotten all the 2024 ones under contract. And we have an obligation through the HUD entitlement program for the CDBG program only to have a timely expenditure of essentially an average of 18 months for the program. We are tracking that. They do a once a year check on May 31st or June 1st, and we should not be exceeding a 1.5 ratio on that last page that you look down in the gray box. We're at 1.9 as of March. We've made some progress in April. We'll make some more progress in May. I don't think we're going to make 1.5 this year because we have a number of larger projects under CDBG. We don't have a huge allocation of funds to begin with. You know, we're at 680,000 or whatever. And we have the Cecil Malone sidewalk project, which is $160,000. It's under contract. They're doing sidewalk work all over the city, you probably have noticed. But as a cost-effective measure for the city, puts out the bid and allows a contractor to do the work on their own time schedule over a 6-month period. So we understand that Cecil Malone is scheduled for August as the project. So we're not going to be able to show expenditures on that program until later in the construction season. We also have had a slow spend down of the homeowner rehab program that INHS has been funded for 2 years in a row. And that ran into a lot of pandemic related issues of trying to get into properties and get contractors on site. That has kind of gone past, and then they ran into the next issue was to try to get 3 competitive quotes for every project, every bid. That was a real big challenge for many of them because contractors were busy enough without having to provide quotes to INHS. We have done some research and figured out they can do 2 quotes instead of 3 quotes. So hopefully that will, that has helped a few things move forward. And they are actively working on those programs. But the reality is that there's like $250,000 out there, and it's not going to get spent down in the next 30 days. So we have a good story to tell to HUD when we don't make the standard. If there is somebody at HUD overlooking the program still, they've been laying off a lot of the HUD staff. So I think we're going to be within probably 75 to 90,000 of making it. And I think that we will just discuss, show them that we have a sidewalk project that's been awarded out, and hopefully that will satisfy HUD that we're,
Is there any way for them to ask for an advance?
we can only spend money, draw down the money from HUD when we have a documented expense to pay out. So no, we could advance some other money, but not, it wouldn't be the HUD fund. So, yeah, so we're probably going to not make that. I don't think it's the end of the world. And, you know, there's a lot of communities that don't make it. States are way behind, you know, a state gets an allocation just like cities do. And they tend to have, instead of a 1.5 ratio, they're around 3. So they have a lot more grants to manage in some respects in a lot of rural areas. And certain projects take a lot longer time to develop. If you're doing a sewer infrastructure project, it's not going to, you know, be done in 6 months. That's the overall trend line here on the grants. The home funds are moving much faster because we tend to have projects that just can spend down quicker, security deposit assistance, rental assistance programs. There's high demand for those programs, and they just kind of move through. INHS has done a great job on their kind of construction projects, but it's been slow on the CDBG one. So that's the takeaway from the grant disbursement summary. The better news is on the loan repayments on the economic development loans, everybody is current, both March and April. And then we have the loan repayments, which we have just one person who's 1 month late on loan repayments. So all good, reasonably good outcomes in terms of tracking these reports.
So next on the agenda is staff report. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us?
Only one thing is that I've been working with John Guttridge on his project to rehab the 115 through 123 South Cuga Street properties, those next door, essentially, right? He's made a lot of progress in the last 60 days on that project, lining up financing, developing his construction documents, putting out bids for work for elements. The electric is the first phase. So that project is moving closer and closer to getting through the full State Historic Preservation Office review. It is an eligible project for historic preservation, as you know, the ILPC has reviewed the project and considered it and granted a certificate of appropriateness for the project. And they have secured a pretty good tenant for 2 floors of the corner building. That's called the City of Ithaca, has agreed to lease space to alleviate some of the shortages in City Hall for some of the offices. So he's got a lot of progress made on that, and I'm trying to figure out with him what's the best time to come back to this committee, because we discussed a conceptual approval for a $300,000 HODAG loan as a bridge loan, kind of a 3-year term, because he's seeking Restore New York funding as well as some other state funding, and their reimbursement time period, it tends to be very slow. So you need to line up some sort of a loan source to cover you over that period. And that's the idea with the HODAG. He still has, is it 16 or 18 housing units that will be created out of the project, and all targeted for 80% AMI. Or below. So it's still a good, strong project in that regard in terms of creating additional housing units. One of our many, I guess, conversion from office to residential projects in the city. So I just wanted to keep you in the loop on that, and probably by July, we'll want to get it back on the agenda, is my guess. So that's all I had.
What's the next step on Cherry Street?
Cherry Street is a request for expression of interest to be issued out and see if we can get responses back.
Okay, and then what's the next step on Inland Island?
Inland Island is we're working to try to eliminate some of the uncertainties. So one is to complete the process of acquiring the property that the Coast Guard Auxiliary occupies right now, and hire a consultant to provide us with information on the nature or the extent of contamination for the soil contamination on the site just south of the Coast Guard Auxiliary, so that people would know what they're facing.
Yeah, sure. Good. Thanks for the reminders. Any other general questions? All right, so according to the agenda, the next meeting is on Tuesday, June 13th here at 3:30. I guess we can worry later about whether or not will be a quorum. I'm not traveling, but it's,
I see June 10th,
I think, yeah,
Tuesday, June 10th.
that date did sound a little wrong when we read it there. So yeah,
Oh,
right, Tuesday would be the 10th because,
Tuesday, June 10th,
10th is a
you'd like it
Friday,
to
yeah.
be, yeah, okay,
thank you, Leslie.
okay. All right, so I guess meaning Nels, we'll worry about a quorum.
We'll do a quorum check again
It
as we
would
get
be
closer.
prior, okay. And if all goes well, Chauvin will be hosting, chairing.
Yes. It's like that, yeah.
All right, so I move that we adjourn. Good. All right. Have a good evening, everybody.
Great.
Thanks,
Thanks so
everyone.
much, Donna.